Hello, good afternoon. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and welcome to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. On today's show, we're going to be discussing climate change and issues here that we can get involved in terms of local organizing. Climate change is a huge issue, and earlier this month, there was a global climate change conference and summit in Poland. We'll talk to leaders of local organizations here in Philadelphia from 350philly.org, and then also Penn Environment. And we'll have activist, writer, and podcaster Ron White from Deep Green Philly. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Keep it locked here on WPPM LP Philadelphia and Philly Cam TV. Hello and welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and we're here live from the Philly Cam studios in Center City. And this month we themed People Power Lunch Hour about climate change. Given that there is a global climate change conference happening in Poland earlier this month, we wanted to continue the conversation and talk more about what we can do locally to solve climate change problems. I'm joined in the studio by three guests who are from local organizations who are here to talk about what they know in terms of the impact fossil fuel extraction has on us here in Philadelphia and South Jersey, and what you can do to get involved in their campaigns. I'd like to welcome to the show Kelly Flanagan. She's from Penn Environment, which is another PA-based organization working on environmental issues. Ron White, who's here from Deep Green Philly. He's a longtime activist, podcaster, and media maker who has been working on these issues for quite some time. And Mina Raval, who is from 350 Philly, which is a membership organization with chapters all over the country, including here in Philadelphia. She's also been an environmental awareness champion and working on many different organizing issues here in Philadelphia. Welcome to the show. So I'd like to start off first with, you are with 350.org and 350 Philly. Tell us a little bit about that organization and some of the issues that you all are trying to focus on.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Firstly, the climate crisis, the climate change, as you call it, it is the climate crisis. It's not global warming, it's not climate change, it's the climate crisis that we're in. We need to acknowledge that. 350 Philly, our goal is to get our carbon emissions down to 350 parts per million. That's our end goal. We are currently around 410 parts per million. How does that affect us? The more carbon or greenhouse gas emissions in the air, the harder it is for us to breathe. So there's a lot more people, every day I meet people that have asthma. That is an immediate public health issue that we need to deal with. One way to deal with it is to stop using fossil fuels. That means anything that burns oil, coal, or gas, or gasoline.
I wanted to add something to you said because I heard Ralph Nader earlier talk on Democracy Now! About the same thing, not wanting to call it climate change, instead calling it climate disaster or climate destabilization. Can you all talk more about the need to sort of reframe it to communicate the serious nature of the crisis? Ron?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree that the term climate change is too benign and it sounds almost like a natural process. And this is what the so-called deniers like to latch onto. They say the climate is always changing. Look back at the history of the planet, and that's true. The climate has changed many times, but what we're dealing with now is a man-made crisis because of our, like Mino said, pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and that's not a natural process. That's something that we're doing to keep our economy going, and that's leading to a crisis situation, a health crisis, ecological crisis, social crisis. It's compounding and getting more serious by the day, basically.
As a blogger and podcaster, do you think the mainstream media is not covering this the way that it should in terms of the serious urgency of having to address the crisis?
Oh, definitely not. Because look at who owns a lot of these media corporations. Like when I first started Deep Green Philly, this was back in 2011, and there weren't a lot of mainstream media articles talking about climate change or about anything. I remember when Fukushima happened, it got a little bit of attention, and then there was the Gulf oil spill disaster that got some attention. But basically, these issues faded into the background until really a few years ago. Now, every day there's like a new article coming out, but this is relatively new. When I first started blogging and podcasting, I felt like I was one of a few people really talking about this. And it's been really interesting to see how now that the situation is more serious, now the mainstream media is paying a little bit more attention to it. But I feel like we can talk later about the problems with their coverage too.
Kelly, welcome to the show. Talk a little bit about what Penn Environment does and how you have a statewide plan to move Pennsylvania to 100% renewable energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a statewide citizen-based environmental advocacy organization, and we're dedicated to protecting Pennsylvania's environment. So everything from our clean air, our clean water, our beautiful open spaces and natural parks that we have. And obviously one of our biggest issues right now is climate change, and what we know to be really the only solution is to transition not only Pennsylvania, but the world to 100% renewable energy. And so at Penn Environment, we're working, just starting in Pennsylvania and then hoping that other states follow suit. But we want to transition Pennsylvania to 100% renewable energy by 2050, which is the deadline that the scientists call for to that we need to stop emitting these fossil fuels if we're going to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. And of course, we're already feeling some impacts today, but they're only going to continue to get worse in the years to come.
I want to talk specifically about Pennsylvania and its history of fossil fuel extraction. And if we could, let's clarify for some people that might not be aware with the terminology. What do we mean by extraction and fossil fuels? I think you can answer this one.
Well, extraction means digging deep into the ground. Mining is another word for it. And what are we mining for? Traditionally, it's been coal, or oil or gas. They're all material that's buried deep underground, and there are international movements to, quote, keep it in the ground, and that's what they're referring to, coal, oil, and gas.
And renewable energy?
Is not underground, is it? It comes from the sun or the wind, which are both out there where we could see them.
Okay, so that's good. So just so everybody is on the same page, any of our listeners or viewers out there know that when we're talking about fossil fuel extraction, we're talking about energy sources that are in the ground that we have to drill or mine to extract. And we talk about renewable energy, we're talking about sources that have a longer shelf life too, right? Because there's only, here in Pennsylvania, there's only so much natural gas they can extract, right, before it's all done. Whereas solar and wind energy, we have endless amounts of that depending on where you're at here on the planet. Okay, so that's the first thing. Yes.
Can I add one thing to that? Here in Pennsylvania, we do have the fracking industry, and what a lot of people don't realize is that a fracking byproduct is used to make plastics. And that's one other organization that I'm here representing is Mural Arts Trash Academy. And I'm the project coordinator for this program. And we have a plastic trash crisis here in Philadelphia. And I think we'll talk more about how the local issues intersect with the broader world issues. But So people are extracting natural gas, and of course that's bad in a lot of ways, but they're also using the byproduct of fracking to make plastics, which adds another layer to the crisis, which is trash pollution, which is, I don't think a lot of people realize that that's another component to fracking.
So, Mina was talking about asthma, which has to do with air pollution, right? And so we have also the issues of air pollution and land pollution too, with all of these landfills. And if you're in Philadelphia, you have seen plastic bags from corner stores blowing in the wind, stuck in bushes and everything imaginable. And other cities and states have even banned plastic bags. They're looking to do that in New Jersey, at least charge people for them. So that is another issue we can add to the long list of things that we're talking about. Mina, did you want to add something?
Oh, Boston just enacted a plastic bag ban.
Yeah.
And so we're looking to emulate them. And Councilman Squiller, if you're listening, we're here to support you on that bag bill.
Okay, so one of the things that we know is that this is a global struggle, right? It doesn't seem to matter where you're at, but there is some type of effect of climate destabilization or devastation wherever you might be. That takes shape in many forms in terms of exploitation of workers. If you're working in coal mines in Korea, or if you are, fracking in Pennsylvania, it also takes the form of these superstorms that we've been seeing, which recently has devastated many countries in Southeast Asia, as well as countries and islands in the Caribbean, including Puerto Rico with Hurricane Maria. Can we talk more about how this global struggle has shown to be led by indigenous communities who have largely been at the forefront of this struggle?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about that because I've spent some time on the so-called Navajo Nation. Their traditional name is Diné people, but we know them as Navajo people. But there's a huge coal mine on their reservation, and so they're extracting the coal from the reservation and using that coal to basically power the big cities of the Southwest, like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Arizona. But on the reservation itself, many people don't have electricity. They don't have enough hospitals. They don't have the resources they need because the extraction industry is just taking from them and giving it to, the other society, the regular society. So there are indigenous people are on the forefront of the struggle because they're actually living on the land that's being destroyed and being polluted. So they're very close to these issues. And in Canada right now, I know there's a situation where some tribes are blocking, I think they call them clans there. But anyway, the indigenous people in Canada are trying to block these pipelines from being built. So they're blockading, they're protesting, and they really are on the forefront of trying to save the environment because they have a really intimate connection with the environment. They use the environment to fish, to trap, they harvest things from the land. A lot of indigenous people are still living very close to the land. And so they can see what's happening on the ground when the companies come and send workers there to, dig up the land and destroy it. So they're really out there like leading the way, I think.
Yes, indeed. We saw a lot of that get coverage and attention during Standing Rock. Yes, which here locally, a lot of people, were in solidarity with the folks at Standing Rock, and people even traveled over there. We had on People Power Lunch Hour an activist who traveled there, was able to report back. So we're going to take a short break right now. And if you're just tuning in, this is the People Power Lunch Hour show, and I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. We're talking about climate destabilization, devastation, crisis, all of the above here on the show. And when we come back, we'll talk more with our guests, local organizers, and activists from various groups here in Philadelphia. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
PhillyCam offers classes for people who want to create their own content and shows. To get started, there are 3 steps you must follow. Step 1. Attend a free info session. Step 2, become a member. Step 3, attend a members-only Intro to Community Media TV and/or radio workshop. To learn more about PhillyCam workshops and info sessions, visit phillycam.org.
Welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. We're here at PhillyCam and the WPPM studios, and this month's theme is climate change or climate devastation, climate destabilization, the crisis. We're talking about all of that and more and what is going on here locally in Philadelphia, PA, and in South Jersey. And I have joined with me in the studio 3 guests who are organizers here locally working on these issues to share their knowledge about it and let you know what you can do locally to get involved with their campaigns. So earlier in the show, Ron was talking about the problem with land pollution, specifically plastic. And I'd like for you to talk more about that and your campaign to get rid of plastic bags here in Philly with the Trash Academy.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I got involved in Trash Academy as an activist. So the director of the program, I think, saw me speaking somewhere at Bread and Roses town hall. And then I ran into her again at this art museum project, Philadelphia Assembled. And she invited me to come into the program as like a teaching activist. And Mural Arts, as you may know, they have all these murals around the city, and everybody knows them as like an artistic organization. And they often have teaching artists who come in to talk to youth and talk to high school students. So my job as a teaching activist was to come in and teach this high school class about sustainability, about green issues in South Philadelphia High School. So that was really interesting. It was interesting to be in the classroom environment, working with youth who weren't really aware of climate issues or sustainability issues and trying to really find creative ways to, I guess, awaken them to that reality. And the doorway of trash and pollution on the streets is, I think, a really good way to get people thinking about these bigger issues because, you know, people see the trash on the street, people see the pollution blowing around in the wind, and it's very obvious. And that's a big issue here in Philadelphia. People really hate the trash. They want the trash gone. So Trash Academy was really born from hearing the community and hearing what they wanted and saying, okay, we have some resources. How can we help you to make your community better? And so that's what we do. We go into communities. We work with anyone who really wants to work with us, business leaders, teachers, activists, students, artists. And we come up with basically creative solutions for the trash and recycling issue. And right now, our main goal is to get plastic bags gone from our streets. We are not lobbying the city. I'm going to make that clear because we have some legal issues that we were just made aware of. So we can't lobby the city, but we can do an education and awareness campaign, and that's kind of what we're doing. We have a partner, Clean Water Action, and the Philadelphia Zero Waste and Litter Cabinet. Those are our partners, and they are doing more of the lobbying aspect where Clean Water Action is. What we're doing is we're going out and we have like this plastic bag costume that the kids wear. And so it's like this really big dramatic looking thing. And people say like, what is that? Why are you wearing that? And we say this costume represents how many plastic bags each person uses in a whole year. And it's hundreds of bags. And here in, let me just read a few statistics because I think it's really shocking when you really hear some of these statistics. So over 500 billion plastic bags are used and discarded every year around the world. 500 billion. 91% of plastics are not recycled. 1 million plastic bottles are sold every minute. And on a good note, Bangladesh was actually the first country in the world to ban plastic bags because Bangladesh is a country where other countries were shipping their trash to. And so they said, we don't really want to deal with this anymore. We're just going to ban the plastic bags. And actually the so-called third world or developing world has been on the forefront of dealing with the trash crisis. So African countries have also been among the first countries to ban plastic bags. And I think that we can do it here in Philadelphia too. Like Mino said, Boston just banned plastic bags. Other cities, like in California, I think you have to bring a reusable bag to the store or buy one. So I think here in Philadelphia, we can do it too.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And again, it's not that hard to make these small changes in your life in terms of bringing your own reusable bags around with you, right? Bringing bottles of water that are reusable. Kelly, I wanted to talk to you about fossil fuel extraction here in Pennsylvania, but specifically fracking, because Pennsylvania is one of the few states that doesn't really tax gas drillers. And even our Democratic administration still pretty friendly and supportive of drilling. And as we've seen, they use the argument of employment and jobs as a way to justify bringing these companies, a lot of them are not from Pennsylvania, into the state to do that. And how does that sort of have long-term effects on our air and water?
I mean, there's so many issues that come from fracking. I mean, one of the main byproducts is methane, which is a worse greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Obviously, carbon dioxide is much more prevalent in our atmosphere. It's why that's what we're talking about most of the time when we talk about greenhouse gases. But the problems with fracking are so much deeper, and it's happening right here in our communities. There's pipelines that are being built that we really have no way of stopping once they start getting built. Unfortunately, once they get their permits, they're able to just kind of continue with that work. It's not a very democratic process, which is incredibly unfortunate. And so, when you hear that argument of, oh, it creates jobs or it's bringing economy to Pennsylvania, what also does that is putting solar panels on people's roofs and building, wind farms out in the middle of the state where there's a lot of open space. If you just think about, how many workers it would take to put solar panels on every roof in Philadelphia, how many jobs that would create, how much that would boost our economy. I think we need to stop thinking of fracking as like this, or natural gas as this like bridge to renewable energy, which is unfortunately a way that a lot of people have been thinking about it. And we need to just skip that middle step and just go right into building more renewable energy, because the technology is always improving. The costs are going down, and it's a viable solution right now, right here today.
Penn Environment does a lot of research and policy making. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a group that does research for us. They're called the Frontier Group, and they do a lot of studies for us on these things, and all of these issues that are very close to home in Pennsylvania. Over the summer, we put out a report called Trouble in the Air that talked about the air quality in Pennsylvania and the greater Philadelphia area, as well as Pittsburgh and even places you wouldn't think about like Lancaster, have some of the worst air quality in the nation. And that comes from not only, smog from industry and things like that, but transportation, and a lot of these other issues. And so we put out these reports so that we can inform people that, you may think that if you live in a more rural area or live in the suburbs, that you're not going to be affected by the poor air quality that is in the cities. But it's affecting everyone. Pollution doesn't stay within state borders, which is why, some of these rollbacks to our federal environmental protections are so problematic.
We'll do our next episode about that.
Yes. I'll not jump into that now, because I could do a whole episode on that.
For sure. Yeah. One of the things we saw that was really shocking was that, we had some bad air quality from the fires in California that spread. All that smoky air spread all the way over to the East Coast, even into Philadelphia and New Jersey. And so again, like you said, the air doesn't stay trapped in the borders. It travels. Mina, you are an advocate of biking, which, a lot of people here are advocating for, to have a more bike-friendly city, more bike lanes. But it's also related to the amount of pollution cars cause, right? And how so many of us drive in cars alone, commuting to work. Can you talk more about, biking and that as a form of sustainability?
Certainly. So Philadelphians travel on average about 13 miles a day. That can be done by bike. Yes, I'm not asking anyone to give up the car if they need a car, but for most of us, cycling can get us where we need to go in conjunction with SEPTA usage. So one way to reduce our emissions is to drive the car less. If you must drive a car, consider switching to an electric car. Electric cars are battery operated, so they have zero tailpipe emissions. But back to cycling, there are folding bikes that you could take on the bus or train. There are electric bikes if you are out of shape and need a little boost going up the hills. So it's not just your basic cruiser bike. There are options even within cycling to get you up and around on it.
Yeah, because again, people in Philadelphia, are also dealing with obesity and a lack of access to places where they can exercise and even our parks. And biking not only is sustainable, but it's also a great form of exercise and getting people in shape. But I do think, from a lot of the bike enthusiasts, bicycle activists I've talked to, is that we still need to do a lot of work to make, especially Center City, more friendly towards biking and other, like electric vehicles, mopeds.
So Center City is so flat and so dense that cars should be banned from Center City and just be open for pedestrians and cycling. That would be the ideal.
Well, originally it was constructed, for horse and carriage. It's not meant to have this much congestion. And, I often wonder whose idea was it to put an interstate highway right along our waterfront, right smack in the middle of so many of our beautiful neighborhoods. And so I like the idea of having more pedestrian-friendly walkways as well, because pedestrians are often hit by vehicles, especially on the Roosevelt Boulevard, which is a dangerous place to cross. And so I think that's why people, opt to get in cars, because they feel safer. So we're going to take another short break. If you're just tuning in, you're listening and watching the People Power Lunch Hour show here at PhillyCam. We're broadcasting from WPPM 106.5 FM, and we're talking about climate issues. And I have joined with me in the studio several organizers from local organizations who are sharing their knowledge with us so that we can learn more about these issues and how to get involved locally in policy making and in their organizing work. So keep it locked here on WPPM 106.5 FM and PhillyCam TV. We'll be right back.
PhillyCam is a community media center that brings the people of Philadelphia together. Located in Center City, Philadelphia, it is a place to make, share, and create media. You can catch PhillyCam on Comcast Xfinity, channel 66, 966 HD, and Verizon Fios, channels 29/30. And on radio at WPPM 106.5 FM. Visit phillycam.org to learn more. PhillyCam, TV and radio that looks and sounds like Philadelphia.
All right, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and today we are discussing climate issues and the current crisis that we have in the global struggle against fossil fuel extraction. I'm joined by my three guests, Ron White of Deep Green Philly, Kelly Flanagan of Penn Environment, and Meenal Raval of 350.org from their Philadelphia chapter. So one of the other things I'd like to discuss, which I found very enlightening watching Democracy Now!'s coverage of the climate change conference in Poland, is seeing how different groups, especially indigenous people and developing nations, are disproportionately affected by a lot of these issues. And I think that it was pretty clear that this is some form of environmental racism. I'd like to talk about what that means and what evidence there is to show that this is impacting people of color and indigenous people disproportionately, and then connect that to what's happening here in Philly with some proposals to put in different plants in neighborhoods of Black and Latino people. Okay, Ron, you're nodding in agreement. We'll start with you. Do you want to comment on that, on environmental racism and what you think that is and what's happening?
Oh, definitely. I see environmental racism as something that we should be talking a lot more when we talk about climate change, because, I mean, they often do put these pipelines and mines in and around the neighborhoods where people of color live. So you mentioned the SEPTA gas plant, and that gas plant is going to go in a majority Black neighborhood, and you have to wonder why would they decide to put it there when they could have put it in maybe an empty space somewhere where no one's living, but they, for their own convenience, decided they want to have it in the city, but they know that people who pay higher taxes are not going to, agree to have a gas plant in their backyard. So they go where people have less political power and where people have less resources, thinking that they won't get as much pushback. And I think that's really what it's all about. It's a very predatory practice where you target people and target neighborhoods that, they don't have that political power. They don't have the resources to maybe get lawyers and fight the industry. So, yeah.
And the hearings that are held are often held in the middle of the day when working people have to work. So they can't show up to voice their opposition.
A lot of time they don't even know that it's coming, right?
That too, yeah.
It's flying under the radar. It happens in these like obscure little zoning and committee meetings. And then all of a sudden the plant is there and it becomes very difficult to remove it once it's there. Can we talk about like what exactly is being proposed? Like what does it mean to have a natural gas plant in Nicetown?
Sure. It's basically to burn gas. I prefer to call it fracked gas or gas, not natural gas, which sounds kind of wholesome. To burn gas to generate electricity to power the regional rail lines. So 6 of the regional rail lines that go through Wayne Junction, which are currently being powered by electricity from our utility, PECO, they would instead be powered by this gas power plant. I always thought riding the train was also wholesome because our trains here are electric and therefore emissions free. However, by switching from PECO electricity to SEPTA electricity with this gas power plant, we're bringing the pollution closer to home, and not that there's no need for that. PECO does a fine job. There's no downtime reported, so there's absolutely no reason SEPTA should be doing it other than pushback from politicians that want to promote the gas industry.
And can you talk a little bit about the Passyunk Energy Center that's also being proposed?
Yeah, that is the SEPTA plant was in Nicetown, which is South Germantown. The Passyunk Energy Center is in Southwest Philadelphia at the end of Passyunk Avenue, where it meets the Schuylkill River. And it is on PGW property, also aka city property, so we own it. The plan is that a private company would invest $60 million to liquefy gas so that, and then PGW would operate the facility. So PGW likes it because there's no cost to them and they get a revenue from the operations. Their revenue would be about $1 million a year, which is very small fraction of PGW's annual revenue. So again, there is no real reason to do this. If we are given by the international scientists 12 years to stop using fossil fuels, committing to a 25-year project that extends our dependency on fossil fuels is insane.
Ron, this story about the climate change or climate devastation report that Minal's referring to was released on Black Friday. Do you think that was on purpose?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they always bury stories during holidays when they don't want people to know what happened. Like, I think this was a report that was actually released by the Trump administration. And so the science was so clear that there's no way they could have come to other conclusions. So obviously, as scientists, they couldn't just put out fake news. So I think what the administration decided to do was to say, okay, well, we're going to release this report, but we're just going to do it when no one's really paying attention because everyone's consumed with family, shopping, holiday, you're off work, you're not looking at your phone as much, you're, not looking at your laptop as much because you're running around doing things on Black Friday. Yeah, it's totally purposeful.
So the international government scientists issued the report in October. A month later, our own federal government gave the implications of the international report to U.S. populations. So scale, the report was scaled for how it affects us, and there's a subset of how it affects Northeast U.S., which is us in Philadelphia, and yes, there's going to be a lot of sea level rise, and yes, we're going to large portions of South Philadelphia are going to be underwater. We need to act on this. I don't know. Call Mayor Kenny. Tweet him at Philly Mayor. Act on the climate crisis.
Yeah, and people are dying from asthma and cancer here in Philadelphia because of these
and
gas
in
plants.
Camden too has one of the highest levels of asthma.
Right. So when I hear people say that sustainability or climate issues aren't really that important, or it's not as immediate, I kind of feel like that's not true at all because people are being harmed, people are dying. In Nicetown, where they want to put this gas plant, the asthma rates are already sky high because they live near Roosevelt Boulevard, where it's like a constant stream of traffic. People are already suffering, and they want to add more suffering on top of that just because it's more convenient for them.
That's another issue. They're when they talk about pollution or environmental impact on these projects, they're talking about the measurements in a vacuum, as if nobody's living there. You need to see how much it adds to the existing level of pollution. We're not living in a vacuum. We're living in an urban center. And the people that are getting sick right now with asthma or what have you from the environmental issues, we are the canaries in the coal mine currently. So we need to wake up to the vulnerable amongst us that are alerting us to get off of fossil fuels. Thank you.
Yes, Kelly, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. The report that came out on the day after Thanksgiving was put together by 13 government agencies, which is, I think, really important to note because it was put together by some of the best scientists in our country, and our president himself, said that he felt that the report was not based in facts and that it was extreme. Those are not direct quotes, but almost based on what Sarah Huckabee Sanders made a statement shortly after that. And so it's just such a problem that the fact that these reports keep coming out that are saying the same thing over and over again, and that we're not everybody is acting on them and not everybody is taking them as seriously as they need to be. In the Northeast, we're going to be seeing more heavy rainstorms. We're going to be seeing higher temperatures. If you're someone who enjoys winter sports like skiing and snowboarding, that's going to be off the table. More mosquitoes, which bring more illnesses and all of these things. And it's just everyone, no matter where you are, is going to be affected. And, so putting in these new gas plants and things like that, it just doesn't make sense. We just need to stop doing them as soon as possible. And adding, as Minal said, another 25-year contract to liquefy and then later burn natural gas is just, completely against what the scientists say.
We're working against us. Some of the other things that we see are unprecedented droughts, flooding, heat, and storm surges. We don't see the droughts as much here, but in California and other countries, they experience both droughts and flooding. And it's something the president has said, there's snow, there can't be climate change, things like that are talked about. Well, there's rain here. So, even though there was a drought, now it's raining. I think that my point is that everyone needs to sort of take some personal responsibility in educating yourself about what this means, because it's complex, right? It's not just one form of weather or storms. It takes shape in many different kinds of forms, and it looks differently depending where you're at here in the United States. We're seeing Californians are very aware of wildfires, right? And that being, one of the effects in Florida. I think, especially in cities like Miami, there's real concern about sea level rise. And we saw that too with Hurricane Katrina. And in the Caribbean, the hurricanes are really devastating. We've been seeing these superstorm Sandy. That wasn't that long ago, right? Which devastated New Jersey. So I just want our listeners and viewers to understand this is a complex issue. It takes time to understand. It takes shape in many different forms. And I think it's absolutely crucial that we educate ourselves about what that is. And all of these organizations have a lot of great information on their website so that people can better understand these issues. Mino, did you want to say something?
So getting off of fossil fuels, you could do that at the personal level or the organizational level. And of course, our city needs to step up to the game and work at the city level to lead us on it. So call your council person, call the mayor. They need to know that there's people concerned, because usually it's a handful of us that go to city council committee meetings and they just shrug their shoulders because they think it's a non-issue. They need to hear from all of us that this is a crisis and we need action now. And if you're actually against the LNG plant that we talked about, go to 350philly.org/no-LNG. There's a petition you can sign. If you can represent an organization, please sign our coalition letter. Your civic group, your church group, we need all of you to step up to tell council we don't want any fossil fuels in Philadelphia.
And I just want to note that I'm on the NASA website. NASA's a federal agency, right? It's under the Trump administration. And I did something really simple, which is I Googled climate change and I wanted to see what the first Google hit was. And it was NASA. So they have a whole website. And the first thing that it says is scientific evidence for warming of the climate system is unequivocal. It also goes on to say that 97% of climate scientists agree that climate warming trends over the past century are very likely due to human activities, and most of the leading scientific organizations worldwide have issued public statements endorsing this position. So when we come back, we're going to talk about a Green New Deal that's being proposed by Democrats. Is it effective? Is it a step in the right direction? I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And then again, giving our listeners and viewers some concrete next steps that they could consider taking in terms of acting here locally. You're watching and listening to the People Power Lunch Hour show here on Philly Cam. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber. We're talking about climate issues. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Philly Cam is a community media center that brings the people of Philadelphia together. Located in Center City, Philadelphia, it is a place to make, share, and create media. You can catch Philly Cam on Comcast Xfinity, channel 66, 966 HD, and Verizon Fios, channels 29/30. And on radio at WPPM 106.5 FM. Visit phillycam.org to learn more. Philly Cam, TV and radio radio that looks and sounds like Philadelphia.
Hello, welcome back to the People Power Lunch Hour Show. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and I'm here in the studio. We're talking about climate devastation and its impacts here locally. I'm joined by members of Deep Green Philly, 350.org, and Penn Environment. And we've been spending the last 45 minutes talking about fossil fuel extraction, its impact on the environment, and a transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. I'd like to talk right now about the Green New Deal being proposed by Congresswoman-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And it's garnering a lot of support and picking up more endorsements from members of Congress. I think young people more than anybody, because their future is more at risk than anybody else, have been getting involved more and more in the fight against fossil fuel extraction. And so it's no surprise that a lot of people are very excited to see something like this being proposed. My question for all of you is this even, what is this? Is this a token gesture? Is this a real thing? Do we need to go much, much further? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that I think, and I don't know, the full scope of what they're proposing, but basically it's the Green New Deal is basically a policy to, solve climate change, spur job creation, clean energy, all of those things, and ultimately move us to 100% renewable energy, which is what, all of our groups also want. We also want 100% renewable energy. So I think, packaging them up in this way, and it's something that we've been talking about for years. And so it's great to be, hearing it talked about in the media more, and that it's on more people's minds, because, it feels like we've been screaming into the void a little bit, and now people are starting to listen.
Well, I just want to say that one of the reasons why it's been in the media is because of all the protests happening at congressional offices. So I want to give a shout out to all the people that have been doing sit-ins in DC, drawing attention. And as we say on this show, direct action gets the goods. And I think that's why we're finding out about this, because certainly Green New Deals and green policies have been proposed for a very long time.
The new Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez gets in the news, but behind her are all the young people that comprise of the Sunrise Movement. That's a movement led by young people. I have been excluded from it, but they're polite enough. I'll admit my age. The Sunrise Movement is led by young people, and they have been spending the last few months campaigning to get more progressives elected. Now that they've got them elected, they're pushing them on the climate agenda, because they know that if we only have 12 years, that's what they need to work on, not if there's going to be a future for any of them. So it's pretty amazing to see what these young people are doing. And the Sunrise Movement started first, before they came up with the Green New Deal, by developing a no fossil fuel money pledge, asking every politician that they campaign for to sign a pledge to accept no money from the fossil fuel industry. So that can still be done. You can go to the website, ask any politician you come across to sign the no fossil fuel money pledge. It starts with that.
Well, like many of all the great things being proposed, a lot of time it gets met with resistance because of the influence we have from corporations and special interest groups in politics. And so I think that ask that you have of, will our elected officials stop taking money from these industries, will ask, answer the question of whether or not they will support the Green New Deal. Because oftentimes, if some of their biggest campaign contributors are oil and natural gas companies and coal companies, or even water companies like Nestle, it makes it really hard for them to champion these causes. Would you agree, Ron?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I want to echo what Mino said about contacting your elected officials and finding out what their stance is on the Green New Deal. Because honestly, I think the Green New Deal, it's like our last chance to save our society from total devastation and suffering in the future. Because if we don't get off of fossil fuels ASAP, I mean, the suffering is going to be almost unimaginable. I don't think we can really even picture in our minds what the world is going to look like. And I think young people, having grown up with science fiction, TV shows, and things like that, they have sort of an idea But I can't stress enough how dire the situation is. I mean, I think even the IPCC reports aren't even factoring in things like you mentioned, methane. The IPCC report doesn't factor in methane to their calculations. So we have the Arctic is melting, there's permafrost melting, so methane is coming from that source. There's methane coming from fracking. There are other feedback loops in the climate system that aren't factored into these reports. So actually, I think the situation is even more dire than what they're saying. So that means that we have to be even more forceful and even more clear-minded and very, very, I don't know what the word is, but we have to make sure that if these politicians don't want to get with the program and do what is best for our society, they have to go. And we can't argue with them. We can't figure out how to make the system work a little bit better. If this system isn't working, we need a different kind of system.
Well, just to add to, accountability, I think the media can play a role in making these issues campaign issues, right? As we build towards 2020 and we have a city council election next year. Certainly when we do these candidate forums and debates, we can center climate change or climate devastation, the climate crisis, as one of the main issues, in addition to healthcare and the economy.
So scientists have to be conservative. They have to state the facts. We don't have to be conservative. The Green New Deal is an effort at the federal level, so much like the New Deal in the 1930s. But that is being emulated and at other levels also. So there's new state reps that are considering that for the Pennsylvania legislature, and we are developing a people's platform or equivalent of the Green New Deal, local policy specific to Philadelphia, because our mayor and all of our council people are up for election at the May primaries. So now's our time to get them all to stand up for our version of the Green New Deal to help protect Philadelphia from the climate crisis.
And our state legislators are stepping up. As Meenal said, there's already legislation in Harrisburg that was announced this past session to transition Pennsylvania to 100% renewable energy by 2050. That's going to get reintroduced in January. And so we need everyone to, call your state legislators and tell them that they need to sign on and co-sponsor this bill and vote for it when it comes up to a vote, because it's our best chance here in Pennsylvania at reducing our impact on this climate crisis.
Yeah, and I want to just again highlight the story of 15-year-old Greta Thunberg, who did a one-woman protest at the Parliament building. She stopped going to school in order to place pressure on them to enact similar policies in her country. And I was really impressed by all the things that she was personally doing as a teen to have an impact on the environment. And she talked about being a vegan, not eating any animals or dairy products because of the impact that cattle and the meat industry have on the environment, using renewable water bottles. She said she didn't fly. If she could, she would drive or be driven, be driven or take a bus. Or even a train. And she said that in order to travel to Poland, it took her 2 days. But she was willing to do that in order, to, again, take personal responsibility. So I feel that if a 15-year-old teenager can do this, then adults really have the power to do this and also teach their children. I want to end with some things that people can do that they could do today that would be some great first steps. And then also maybe you want to take this opportunity to invite people to connect with your organizations going forward.
Yeah, so I'll start, and I guess we can just kind of go around. So Penn Environment, we have a ton of ways to get involved. I would say the first and easiest thing folks can do is, if you're not driving right now, text PA Climate to 21333 to join our mobile action network. We send periodic updates and texts, not too often, a couple times a month when things like, say, an important bill is coming before our state legislators and we want you to call and tell them to vote a certain way on it, or an important report comes out or things like that. So we'll just, keep you updated on our campaigns. If you want to get a little more involved, we have tons of volunteer opportunities. Email us, go to our website, go to our Facebook page, our Twitter. It's really easy to get in contact with us. Everything's just Penn Environment. And then the last thing I'll mention is, as I said, we're really advocating for this 100% renewable energy legislation, and we'll be heading to Harrisburg on June 12th. So mark your calendars. We're going to be meeting directly with our legislators to tell them to support this legislation. We'll also be having a big rally, Clean Energy Expo, all these really exciting things. So we really hope that a lot of folks can join us to really show how much weight there is behind this movement.
Okay, Ron, we can get rid of our plastic bags, right?
Yeah, I think we can. Trash Academy, we're meeting weekly at Mural Arts office. Anyone is welcome to come to our meetings and strategize and plan for education and awareness outreach. We make art, we plan our events. You can get a stipend, you get a $50 stipend for participating in our program when we do events. So especially for young people who are looking to make a little bit of extra money, that's really good. You can contact us through Facebook at Trash Academy, or at our email, trashacademy@muralarts.org, or we have a website, trashacademy.org. And yeah, really find out about our plastic bag campaign. You can look and see what we've done so far, our trash mobiles, our public art around sustainability. And as far as my blog, Deep Green Philly, the website is not really as active, but you can follow me on Facebook. And yeah.
And there's a lot of good articles on there that still apply. So you've done a lot of great writing and coverage of things. So it's a good source of information. Minal, you get the last word.
Okay, hi. First, don't forget to sign our No LNG petition, 350philly.org/No LNG. Another way to meet us in person, which is always good, is I maintain a weekly calendar of climate-related events. So if you want to join a demonstration or a meeting or a discussion, our site is the place to go, 350philly.org/calendar. This is how you're going to meet all of us, and we're going to take over transitioning our city. What we need to do is electrify everything that uses fossil fuels. Start thinking on that and using much, much less of fossil fuel energy. That's homework for you until we meet again.
Yeah, even riding your bicycle, get that bicycle out of the basement or garage, dust it off, carpooling, walking. I mean, those are all things anybody can do. And I just want to say, if you breathe the air, you drink the water, you are affected by this issue. And there's so much that all of us have the power to do in order to make a change. You heard them. We have 12 years. This is very important. We're smiling and we're dreamers, right? So
Right.
we're staying positive, but we also want to communicate the urgency of this and the need to continue talking about it. We hope we can continue this conversation. And if you'd love to learn more about PhillyCam or the People Powered Lunch Hour Show, you can go to our website, phillycam.org. And you can also see this episode and past episodes on our YouTube page. And it'll also be archived on our Facebook page as we are also streaming live. I want to thank all of our guests for coming today. Ron White of Deep Green Philly and Trash Academy, Kelly Flanagan of Penn Environment, and Minal Raval of 350.org. These are all really great organizations to learn more about. There's also so many other organizations out there. I want to give a shout out to Food and Water Watch, which has done a lot of great work, and the Clean Energy Action Network. Protecting our waters. There's so many, and we did another episode about this issue last year, so make sure you check it out. All right, I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, signing off for today. Thank you so much for watching and listening. See you next week.